meeting is now being recorded.
So the Music and Choreographer program was developed in response to our member requests to address the issues around finding, securing, and using music in dance. Our three-part program this year has started with bringing a guest entertainment lawyer to the Dance USA member councils in June to discuss music rights. Now we're in our three-part webinar series, and the first of that webinar is today, Finding Music for Choreography. Two more webinars are happening this fall. The second one is Navigating Music Rights for Dance 101, and the third is Music and the Choreographer, Stories from the Field. Finally, we will be posting endless resources and more as you help add to them on the Dance USA website for how to find and secure the rights to music. In addition, we will be posting the webinar recordings there as well. This program is funded with generous support from the Virginia B. Toulmin Foundation. Today's presentation will start with some brief speaker introductions. Then we will take a look at music resources available from the American Composers Forum and Innova Records. Then we will hear about music resources available from Naxos of America. Next, we will take a look at more resources available from research centers, blogs, radio, and more. We will then have a case study, how one choreographer finds and uses music featuring choreographer Taja Will. And then we will wrap up with Q&A and dialogue with all of you. A note about today's topic. How and where choreographers find music is as wide and varied as the endless kinds of dance genres in creation. Therefore, today's webinar will highlight some current resources for finding music, but of course it will not be exhaustive. That is why we're going to need your help. Where do you find your music? Help us build our resource page. You can email your music resources at any time to communications@danceusa.org so that when the resource page goes live, we can actually continue to add information to it. With that, I would like to kick us off by introducing our moderator, Mary Ellen Childs. Mary Ellen is an independent composer who has received countless fellowships and awards across the country for her musical compositions. She also serves as the program director for the McKnight Artist Fellowship for Dancers and Choreographers. Mary Ellen has been very active in the field of classical music and new American music and currently serves as the board chair for the American Composers Forum. When working on developing this programming, it was my pleasure to reach out to Mary Ellen, who I've crossed paths with numerous times because of her work with the McKnight Artist Fellowships for Dancers and Choreographers. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Mary Ellen, who is going to moderate our speakers. Mary Ellen.
Well, thank you, Amy. I'm so delighted to be part of this. I have a foot in the dance world and a foot in the musical world, and so this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So I want to introduce our other speakers, Philip Blackburn, who's the Director of Artist Services at the American Composers Forum and the Director of Innova Recordings, and Nick D'Angelillo, the Director of Licensing and Library Services at Naxos America, and Taja Will, who is a McKnight Choreography Fellow right now. So to learn just a little bit more about our speakers, I'm just going to go around the table and ask each of them to say just a couple of sentences about themselves and their background. Let's start with Philip.
Hello, my name is Philip, and this is the sound of my voice speaking to you out there in webland. I'm a composer, environmental sound artist. I've been at the American Composers Forum since the late 20th century, and I've produced or helped midwife over 600 albums on the Innova Recordings label. Will that do?
Great. That's perfect. Thank you, Philip. Nick.
Hello, my name is Nick D'Angelillo, and this is the sound of my voice. I am currently the Director of Licensing and Library Services for the Naxos Music Group, one of the world's leading classical music groups, and involved in countless projects for film, television, dance productions, video games. You name it, I'm involved in it, and happy to be here and discuss with everyone.
And Taja.
Hi, everyone. I'm Taja. I'm a local choreographer to Minneapolis, Minnesota. I create works that are in the contemporary and improvisational genres, and then I also work in the larger national dance field on issues of diversity and inclusion.
Well, thanks to our entire panel. So we're going to start with Philip, but before we sort of jump into this topic, I want to echo something that Amy said, which is that we hope today that we give you some ideas and some other possible sources that might be new to you, but there are so many ways to go about looking for music and so many possible places to look that this will not be a comprehensive list by any stretch of the imagination. And we really are eager to hear from people out there with more ideas. But let's start with Philip. And can you tell us more about your work at the American Composers Forum and at Innova?
Yeah, Innova Recordings is the label of the American Composers Forum. It's been around since 1982, and as I mentioned, we've got quite a gargantuan catalog built up over those years of contemporary classical, experimental, jazz, world, and no genre, one-of-a-kind music. It's all U.S. connected, if not U.S. based. We do have some projects from around the world, but there's a great diversity of music that we've always felt the ideal audience for would be choreographers. So I'm happy to point you in this direction among others today, because we imagine that choreographers are looking for something that not everybody else has already used already, and that would be easy to work with and exciting and and interesting for you. We, as a label, deal directly with the composers who retain their rights but allow us to license them on their behalf, and also performers and ensembles who come to us with projects. And in those cases where we get mechanical licenses from the composers, there will be a two-stage licensing process, but we don't need to worry about that today. Under our unique business model,
we will have
artist...
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just going to interject for just a second, Philip.
Please.
Because we have a little delay here. Sure, I was just going to remind people that our next webinar will be on that topic exactly, licensing music for dance. So tell us more.
Great. In this relationship between our artists and the label, the artists retain all of the rights and 100% of the income, so you know that any work that we do on their behalf goes directly into their back pocket. It's also a curated label. It's not. It doesn't take everything that comes through the door. So I imagine one of the things in this world of glut, if not superabundance, that you're looking for is a collection of quality music that someone's listened to and verified that indeed it's worth putting out, and we have the right networks to kind of push it on the artist's behalf. So there's no substitute for lots of listening, abbreviated to LOL. But we've tried to highlight some to start with from our vast catalog that you can see up there on the screen. Some have been tagged by myself largely, but also from the other two composers on the label who are on the staff of the label. That's Chris and Tim. Some have been tagged because their original intent was for dance use, and we've got composers that you may have heard of, like Eleanor Hovda, Robert Moran, Kenji Bunch, Mary Ellen Childs. We've got Garifuna Punta music from the shores of Belize, and we've got vintage Cuban electronica too, all of which was music originally intended for the dance context. And others are in there tagged because, in our opinion, they might be adaptable to your creative uses. Maybe because they're atmospheric or have a strong rhythmic profile. Some might be more background, others more in your face. Anyway, lots to choose from, but we've tried to lead you to that particular selection there. So if you go to our website, innova.mu, and right here, so we want to click to the next one, you'll actually see something under our Collections tab. Can we have the next slide, please? Because under that, oops, really, that's the SoundCloud. Okay, if you go to innova.mu, under the catalog selection, maybe we should go back one because we were almost there. That word collection, any, if you pull down that menu, it will go to the collection of music for dance. And that's a pre-selected listening. You can look at each one of those albums and read about them. And you get one free track to listen to via our SoundCloud pull-in. There we go. That's the actual picture, music for dance. Do you see those words there? So that would be a good place to start. There may be some names you recognize, and there are ways to delve into that. The other one, if we go to the SoundCloud playlist, basically we make one track free, that's it, thank you, from every album so that you can listen. And there's a playlist, you can access this from the front page of the Innova albums, innova.mu, or you can go directly to the SoundCloud and look under the Innova Recordings tag there. And this is probably an even greater way to start if you're out about the house and you just want to listen until something strikes your fancy. Because that's our entire catalog, many days worth, one track from each. And if something is what you're looking for, then, hey, you've heard it and you can follow up through the website. If you're not a SoundCloud user but you love Spotify instead, we can go to our Spotify playlist because we do try and be ubiquitous wherever there are listening people out there in the world who might be sympathetic to our kind of music. We are there, thanks to Naxos, our distribution partner. So this is Spotify, and there's one of our playlists right there, Music for Dance. So you're welcome to have that on as you go about your business too. And then the next one is a similar kind of thing on YouTube, also free. This one has pictures, and many of these are videos from the artists themselves, some of which are actually dance related, some of them are concert music or have different kinds of visuals, but the audio may be just what you're looking for, who knows. And of course we're on the Naxos streaming music library as well that you'll hear more about in a moment. So if there's anything specifically you're looking for, feel free to ask us. You can contact us through our website there. We are three composers here, as I mentioned, and we know the music intimately because we listen to it before it all goes out and even remember a good chunk of it. If you want to find an artist and want to, or if you do succeed in finding an artist whose music you like and want to commission them for a tailor-made piece, we can put you in touch. We love to do that kind of networking and making of connections. And remember, composers also want to find choreographers just as much as you want to find them. So this could be a happy kind of match. And another thing, once you find an artist, is you might want them to perform that same recorded work live. And again, we can make those connections for you. For instance, the James Sewell Ballet did this for Todd Reynolds a couple of years ago. So the Composers Forum, of which we are under their umbrella, is a possible source of funding, but also many, many, many more composers across the country. So under the Opportunities section, or the Program section here, we've got the Commissioning Fund, ACF Create, which is funded by Toulmin Foundation, so there are geographical restrictions. But anyway, that's one possible program that could be a source of funding if you happen to fit those criteria. And also, if you just go to the Composers Forum front page, there's an opportunities listing where you're welcome to post a free announcement. There we go. Under that menu, opportunities. Just tell us, just post an opportunity with a deadline and a description of what you're looking for, and you will find samples, suggestions, scores, all kinds of things coming directly from the composers members who are looking at those opportunities daily for making these kinds of connections. So that's just some of the things that we deal with every day, and we are at your service, and we hope we've pointed you in some of the right directions to begin.
Thank you, Philip. Those are some really good suggestions of places to go do a lot of listening, just right online. And I also appreciate your willingness to field calls from people who want to talk to you directly and get your advice and your thoughts on what they're looking for. So, Nick, let's hear from you now. Can you tell us more about Naxos and how your resources might be useful to dance artists looking for music.
Absolutely. So a lot of folks listening probably know Naxos in some way, shape, or form, either as a distribution group, as a label, perhaps even some of you we've worked with on the Naxos licensing front. And so Naxos is, we refer to it as a music group. We are not just a label in that sense. And so we have got a number of things that are useful both internally, and then I've also, in our kind of prep call, have described some things that I use when I'm hunting and searching for music externally. Usually one of my first stops is our Naxos Music Library. This is a resource that's available directly. You can go and sign up. However, many folks who have access to NML do so through some type of institution. They're a university, they're a professor or an adjunct at a public library, an orchestra that's offering as a subscription. And in addition to that, if you don't have access and you're like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous, we are actually going to be providing access for all of the webinar attendees. The username and password will be the same. They'll be Dance USA, all one word, for both, and that will be active shortly after the webinar concludes through the end of November. And we'll make sure we send that out as well. But the Naxos Music Library is a collection of about 2.1 million recordings. All things classical, jazz, world, wind band, etc. It's a great place to kind of hunt and peck. There's a number of curated playlists and listening lists for genre and mood and style, in addition to what you would expect from any kind of streaming service. So the kind of classical greatest hits are there. What we can affectionately call the deep cuts, kind of everything, you know, as you'd expect to find them for the maybe classical music novice is represented. And for a lot of reasons, we now offer Naxos Music Library World, which is a separate service. Again, the same credentials will work there. We'll send them out. But if you are kind of looking to choreograph a dance or a production, and it's got either short vignettes from different sections of the world, or you think, you know, I really love to use some music from Western Africa or from Southeast Asia, Naxos Music Library World can help you kind of narrow in on that. It's a partnership with the Smithsonian Folkways label and group. You know, you'd be able to actually browse by country, by map. So if you're looking for a particular region or, again, a cultural group, you can zero in on that. All of these services are kind of designed for the end user. And our NaxosLicensing.com website, which is kind of our portal for all things for licensing, for film, television, dance, productions, textbooks, you name it, has tons and tons of music. Again, another set of playlists and listening lists, and the search system on Naxos Licensing actually kind of allows you to dig a little bit deeper. The waveforms and the metadata of each of the files and each of the tracks and each of the movements of particular pieces have been categorized and tagged based on varying kind of unique identifiers. You can see them, a couple of them there on the screen. But again, just visit the site and you can kind of check it out more. And then in the kind of playlist vein, Naxos also has a adventure we call Unclassified. Unclassified is a way for us to kind of bring music of kind of all varieties to the classical curious. So that would be a great place. And those are, I think we're going to get to those slides in a little bit. They've been reordered a little bit. And we're going to get to those slides in a few. And maybe I should just wait and touch on it then, rather than talk about it now.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you, Nick. That's really helpful to know more about Naxos. We did have a question that came in. It's terrific that you're offering free access to your library through the end of November for people who have joined our webinar. Someone asked, is there a fee to subscribe beyond that? Can you just tell us a little bit how to access Naxos after that point?
Sure. So there is, if you kind of just visit the website as a kind of individual subscriber. There is a subscription fee. I believe it ends up being about $200 USD per year. But I will work with the folks at Dance USA to get a discounted rate for those who do want to subscribe on an ongoing basis. We'll work with Dance USA to get that up and running. And again, to get that up and send that out. So. Mm-hmm.
And I think you mentioned earlier that there are many institutions who subscribe. So if somebody can access through an institution, including public libraries, so that
exactly.
Is that right, Nick?
Yeah, that's the best place to go. The Naxos Music Library is, while it is something that we all use as an individual, it's really designed for the institutions. So, again, public libraries are great, universities, orchestras, any of your kind of partner music music ensembles in your, cities and towns and things might have access to it, as well as national organizations, things like if you or anyone's a member of ASBDA or anything, again, number of larger institutions. But we'll work with Dance USA to make sure that we get access up and running, and for those who want to pursue it, we can.
That's a great offer. Thank you. So now let's turn our attention to research centers and international centers. So we were just mentioning libraries. I want to say again that libraries are a terrific resource center and tool, and there are some places around the country who have special research centers or special collections. Here's one, the Center for Black Music Research, which is at Columbia College in Chicago. And while they don't, as far as I know, have a lot of online listening, as some of the other resources we've been talking about, they're an amazing resource for music of this topic at their research center in Chicago. So anybody who's in that area or could be in that area, it's a terrific resource. So I wanted to let people know about that. There are places around the world that specialize in particular types of music. So if you have an idea of what area your musical ear is taking you in, you might be able to find something that specializes along those lines. Here's the Foundation for Iberian Music. Terrific resource. And if we want to kind of look at global networks, I might direct you to the International Association of Information Centers. You can see the map on our right has a little dot where their network has information centers around the world. And if you go to their website, you can click on any one of those dots and bring up information. And many of them have online catalogs where you can go ahead and listen to music and select things. They're also a really great resource as far as putting you directly in touch with musical artists if you're trying to reach someone in their area. And in some cases, certainly not all, but in a few cases, there might even be some opportunities for funding that music. Let's go to the next slide, because there's the International Society for Contemporary Music is another one, another place that has network centers around the world, and here's their map of what's available. And again, you can click on any one of those and be taken to websites for those individual centers, and then keep pulling that thread and finding music to listen to. I want to actually just mention a few resource centers around the world that have particularly comprehensive online listening resources. The Canadian Music Centre, just to our north, the International Society for Contemporary Music in Korea. There's a Music Information and Publishing Center in Lithuania. There's a center in Brazil, Aguaforte, and the Contemporary Music Center of Ireland. And I want to thank Franco Terry from the New Music Box and New Music USA. He's very much connected to many of these music centers, and he told me that these are a handful that are particularly rich online resources for listening. Of course, there are blogs, radio, online radio, and more. Nick and Philip as well, I might have you kind of comment on some of these because I think you know them well.
Sure. A large part of, this is Nick D'Angelo again, a large part of my day-to-day in searching for music for film, television, advertisements involves just that, searching. And so I'm in the same boat as kind of everyone else on the call. Again, I alluded a little bit to our unclassified section on Spotify and Apple Music and whatnot. But oftentimes if there's a piece of music that's either a reference track or something that you've been dancing to and you think, I like this, but I want something that sounds similar, don't be afraid to let the computers give it a try. Both Spotify and Apple Music, Counterstream as well, Pandora, they can all kind of take their stab at creating playlists and radio stations that are similar. And I found quite a lot of music that way, just organically, things I never would have discovered. And so I wouldn't count the computers out as well. And then as far as other blogs and things that I kind of visit and search, Mary Ellen had just mentioned the Music Box, of course. Another favorite of mine is the Alex Ross blog, The Rest is Noise. The Violin Channel tends to have some good stuff, as well as I Care If You Listen. All of these kind of combined are great places just to kind of stay on top of things that have released or come out or gems. It's just they're generally pretty good places to find things you might not have heard.
You briefly mentioned Pandora there. I don't see that on the slide, so maybe we want to add that for people to create their own radio stations or start off with an artist you like and add them in and see what the algorithm produces for you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Great suggestion, Philip. Thank you. We'll add that. I think I want to make a particular mention of Counterstream Radio. This is the radio station of New Music USA, and it's a great place to go if you just want to see what you might happen across that would stand out to your ear. You may hear a lot of things there that, I certainly do, but I don't know of, and so it's a good place to go for sort of the curious listener.
And one more place to add maybe is New Sounds Radio from John Schaefer on WNYC.
Excellent. All right, let's go to the next slide. Oh, I did want to talk a little bit. We've mentioned New Music USA a couple of times, and actually another place that you can go is directly to their website because they have an interesting way of listing all of their awarded projects on their website. There are many with dance, but there are many others that don't include dance but would also have musical links. So all of their awarded projects have musical samples and often video, and it's a great place to go browse and maybe come across something interesting. Now, we'd actually love to hear from Taja. We're calling her our case study so that we can actually hear from her how she's gone about finding the interesting musical artists that she works for, or she works with. So, Taja, I'm going to turn it over to you while we have your bio up on the screen so that people can read a little bit more about you. But I just want to say that you are based in the Twin Cities area, that you are a current McKnight Choreography fellow, that you've worked and danced with a number of groups in this area and around the country, and you also maintain a private healing practice that blends the modalities of healing justice work with developmental psychotherapy and somatic body work, and this finds its way into your own choreographic work as well. I think another interesting thing about you and what you do is that you are a trained musician yourself, and you often incorporate music making for the dancers in the piece. So I'd love to hear more about how you have gone about finding your interesting musical collaborators and how you work together, because I know each piece that you've done has a very different story to tell.
Yes, thank you so much for that introduction. One thing that I have said in my bio for many, many years is that I value sonic and kinetic partnership. And this definitely comes from a background in my undergrad study as an opera performance major and kind of secondarily as a composer myself through Musique Concrète. So I really value new and original music, collaborative relationships. And one thing that I keep hearing on this call from Philip and Nick and when we were prepping together is that a lot of this is listening. A lot of it is keeping your ears open in the world. As a conceptual artist and someone who is making work that has a lot of different stories and episodes and messages within the work, I really need something tailored to each work to be very different. And I value relationships. I want to work in collaboration. So a lot of my connections with these collaborators who are making sound with me and for the work is really getting to know each other and finding these kind of creative ways to each other. So this first set of photos is Carlisle Evans Peck, who was introduced to me by a friend of a friend, a video designer who was making kind of trailers for my new work. I was looking for someone who I could trust to hold space, who could also play the piano a certain type of way, and who had a performative quality. And a friend of a friend said, I have someone for you. I think this project is interesting because I also worked with Michael Wall, a composer, who some on the call may know. He's worked with dozens of choreographers as an accompanist and as a composer. He's also known as Sound for Movement. And so while I was having this personal connection with Carlisle, meeting him through the local community, I was thinking about who I wanted to compose the larger sound score for the work. And in this case, I had been doing a lot of listening over several years and kept finding myself attracted to his music. When I was seeing dancers in the Bay Area or when I was seeing work in New York, I kept seeing the same name, Sound for Movement, Michael Wall. Who is that? And so I literally cold called him and I said, you're my dream composer. Can we work together? And it worked out. And he created a 50-minute sound score for this piece. We talked with Carlisle a little bit. And then I did live music and vocal looping, which is on the next slide in the piece. And so I would send him the sounds that I was composing myself live. I would send him what we're doing with Carlisle, and then we all work together in that way remotely. Another thing I wanted to mention before I talk about the next couple of slides is that my work does use sampling. It's not even all original composed music, but the way I go about sampling music is still through listening. I was telling Mary Ellen the other day, one time I was at the gym and I heard this lyric in the 80s kind of out song that I was listening to, and I thought it was a really interesting lyric for how I was thinking about a new work. And so then I screenshotted on Pandora that song. I went into another research period with it where I was looking up the lyrics, looking up the song, ended up finding on YouTube a very creepy acoustic version of it and sampling 30 seconds of that. So keeping your ears open, I think, is one of the most important things for finding new music or finding what works with whatever you're choreographing. Moving on to the next slide, this is kind of an exciting project where we had the privilege of the Playing the Building installation here in Minneapolis at a space downtown called Aria. And the group that was curating this installation invited a few choreographers to come be in the space. The piano was set up, linked to all kinds of different sound and echo chambers. If you're familiar with this installation, it's really exquisite. And then I was invited to bring in a performance. And because I work with improvisation a lot, I called Justin Nellis, who's pictured, who's worked with me quite a bunch in the past, a friend of a friend. Justin is kind of a sweet case. I guess I shouldn't even call him a friend of a friend. He is someone who I saw training in his musical career while he was in college. We did go to college together and overlapped a little bit. He is the younger brother of a very close friend of mine, and I saw him training in a similar style to how I was training in music composition. And then he started working with me on prepared piano, vocal looping, and live performance in 2011. Here in 2013, playing the building, we all assembled that day in the space for the first time and created live performance together. The next slide will show another picture of the piano. Here. And we can go on to the next one. Another project I did, I Am the True Vine, with Paul Rudoy. This was actually supported by the American Composers Forum Live Music for Dance program. Paul was introduced to me by a colleague in the dance field. He wanted to work with improvisation and wanted to learn more vocal looping. He's primarily a choral composer. And so our mutual friend introduced us, and we started this collaborative research experimentation period that ended up lasting a couple of years, where I provided him feedback on vocal looping and dynamic textures of sound and how my body was inspired to by it, or if my body was overwhelmed by it. And we ended up creating this informal performance together. We were both in a mutual research improvisation period. We can go on to the next one. So this is from my most recent work, and Mary Ellen mentioned this too. I have largely worked with collaborators in performance who also have music backgrounds. My primary collaborators have been here Tim Rayborg and Kathleen Pender, and we work together vocally. In the studio, we always warm up together. I have long histories with both of them, but being able to bring the voice into performance is something that I teach, something that I'm always looking for in performers. And so we did a lot of the live music for this performance. And then I also worked with a sound designer, B.A. Musser, and then again with Carlisle, who we saw pictures of before, to collaboratively write a new song, which we call the Schoolhouse Rock, for this performance. And here you see us getting ready to sing the Schoolhouse Rock. And while Carlisle wrote the music for it, we all wrote the lyrics together in his living room over one afternoon. So I worked very collaboratively with all of the people in the performance, all of my designers and performers, to find how we can be in relationship with each other and create new work from sound. And I'm looking forward to a new performance. I'm just kind of coming online with this next work. And another way of meeting a collaborator is that the one that you see pictured here, we had a band come and play at our party reception afterwards. And now the composer, who is the lead singer of that band, City Councilor, has approached me about creating our next work. And again, this is relationship-based. They felt really attuned to my content, being kind of sociocultural, sociopolitical content, and they are a band that writes pop music and love songs about identity and government policy. So we find our kind of unique values meeting each other and are excited to start a brand new collaboration.
Well, thank you, Taja. That's really great. You said so many things that I found really fascinating. You talked about keeping your ears open in the world. And there is so much music that's around us all the time. That's a really wise way of thinking about it. And also that a lot of what you do is relationship-based. So the way that you're finding people and they're finding you and you're finding each other and how you go from there, it clearly is so relationship-based. And then that you found music in so many different ways, through a mutual friend, through somebody who was playing in a band that you saw, by listening at the gym, by following up on Pandora, bringing your own voice into the performance. So you're a terrific case study, Taja. Thank you. So Amy, shall we take some questions now and any other discussion? Do you have any questions for us?
Yes, that would be great. So thank you again to our speakers, and a reminder that if you are participating in the webinar on the online web portion, there is a public chat box in the bottom left-hand corner, and you can post your questions for us there, and then we can share them with the speakers. Or you can tell us where you find your music, because as we mentioned, we know that we certainly have not been, there's no way to cover every resource and approach, and so we'd love to learn from you. All of this information is being compiled to create a resource page on the Dance USA website. And this PowerPoint and webinar will be available soon on the Dance USA website, and we can contact all of you who have participated in the webinar directly so that you'll be able to have access to all of the links and libraries that we have talked about today. So we did have a question come in from an attendee who wanted to hear some advice on how can composers increase their visibility in front of dance artists. And I thought, Mary Ellen, this was a great question because it leads in well to one of the activities you're doing in Minneapolis.
Yes, I'd be happy. I know exactly what you're talking about, Amy, and I'd be happy to talk about that. And I'm really delighted that there's a question that came in from a composer, because I think that just points out what I know so well, is that it's not only choreographers and dance artists who are looking for music, but it's often composers who are keen to collaborate and to work with dance artists. So one of the things that we actually have started doing here in the Twin Cities, and it's through a partnership between the American Composers Forum and the Cole Center for Dance and the Performing Arts, is we've started hosting what we call composer choreographer meetups. We had one in the spring. We actually have another one this Saturday night. And it's really it's simply getting people in the room together. We have wine and we have a few, things to eat, and we send out an invitation to the dance community, to the musical community. We ask for RSVPs, and the way we do it is everyone who RSVPs can also send us information, a photo, a bio, a link to their music, or a link to their choreographic work, and we compile these on a web page so that beforehand or afterwards people have a single place to go to find out about each other. The one that we're doing this Saturday is in conjunction with a performance at the Cole Center. So the reception, the meetup, is going to be before the performance, and then anyone who goes to the meetup will get a discounted ticket to the performance, the dance performance at the Cole Center afterwards. So I mentioned that, first of all, for anybody who's in the Twin Cities area and who would like to join us. Let's see. I think you can go to the American Composers Forum website to find out more information about this, or people could come to me directly, and I'd be happy to forward them a specific link. But if you're in another area, you might think about some way that this could be a model for you, that you could host a composer, choreographer, collaborate meetup, because we find whenever people sort of have the opportunity to come together, that things will grow out of that.
And just to add on to that, Mary Ellen, we'd be happy as the Composers Forum to facilitate reaching out to composers in those areas. If there are any choreographers in a particular location, more than likely we have some composer contacts and members in that area, and we can certainly send out messages to them.
Yeah, the American Composers Forum, although it's based in St. Paul, is an excellent resource for people around the country. So keep them in mind. And Philip, thank you for being so welcoming. And I know also Billy Lackey, who's the Vice President of Programs there, also welcomes hearing from composers or anyone looking for music. So use them as a resource. The question was about how can composers increase their visibility? I think I would suggest a couple simple things. One is go to dance performances. Go see what's out there. Go see what you like. Introduce yourself to people so that they know that you are interested in interested in choreography. And then I think another can be how you use your own website. You might have a particular page that might be focused on music for dance so that people who are looking for that specifically will have your take on how your music would work well in that collaborative arena. So those are a few thoughts.
Thank you. We've had a couple of questions come in on the public chat. So for our speakers, do any of you have suggestions for educators on how they can encourage the students who are only listening to certain kinds of artists to find more music? And as a follow-up, she's asking in particular that this is because students seem pretty overwhelmed and they don't even know where to begin. And so, I know we've shared a lot of resources today. Where would you all suggest students begin to expand their music listening?
Well, I'm happy to suggest that.
That's a great question. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Well, actually, that's one of the things. Overwhelming is definitely the word of the day. And that's exactly why we've curated the catalog and curated the collections and narrowed it down for you in some ways. So if you go to innova.new and you click on the SoundCloud link, that might be a really good place to start for students. It's free. They probably have a SoundCloud account anyway. And, that's definitely going to expand their listening in a particular kind of direction. Another way would be if they have their own favorite artists, then encourage them to go to one of the online radio stations, the Pandoras of the world, where they enter their favorite artist and the algorithm expands their listening to related things that they may not have known about.
Yeah, great point, Philip. One of the other things I'd like to point out is that a lot of artists and composers, especially in this kind of scenario, the studied music, what you consider more classical or jazz or non-pop things, a lot of students, especially, maybe love kind of film music or love things that are adjacent, and encourage anyone who's interested to explore that. Just because it doesn't exist on a Naxos release or an Innova release or something else, a disc or a release, doesn't mean that it's not fantastic music. Doesn't mean it doesn't deserve to be heard. And so I would encourage folks to not shy away from things that their ears enjoy, and try to kind of find things along that line as well.
We had a comment that came in that I think is really good and apt, that part of our skill as professional choreographers is to develop processes that work for an individual. And you can't do everything, so pick something, start there. And I often think of it as pulling a thread. You start in one place and you kind of pull that thread and you see where that might lead and that might lead and that might lead to something else. So maybe one way not to get overwhelmed is to just think of starting one place and seeing where that will lead.
That's right.
Do you have any thoughts about this topic?
Mm-hmm.
I do have a couple of thoughts, which are a little bit socio-political, actually. I was thinking about sampling and how I have seen when I have guest taught at universities or come in as a choreography consultant that there's a lot of interest in popular music or even music that is a decade or 2 decades old. And one of the things I talk to them about is how they're choosing sound that is finding kind of their same values, whether that be for rhythm or texture, density, that feels unique to their work, because a lot of our music, when we're thinking about popular music, has history and connotation. And I also encourage younger dancers, college-level dancers, to think about what is the history of this music and how does it fit the work. So in no way is that easy to kind of change the listening pattern, but I feel like those are some instigating questions that could feel like exciting research.
Another suggestion, if I may, which is kind of bizarre maybe, is that maybe it's an artificial distinction between composers and choreographers. We're all creative individuals, no matter the discipline. And choreographers are often skilled in editing and keeping your ears open and sampling, as you suggested. And why not call yourself a composer and make your own work? And if you want feedback from other kinds of artists, including composers, to take it in different directions as well, then feel free to ask. But there's no reason why you shouldn't initiate the composition itself. Or for that matter, the composers could be dancing, but that's for another seminar.
So we're getting towards the end of our hour here, and I wanted to just leave a moment or two to ask everyone and anyone on our panel if there's anything that you would like to underscore before we finish. Anything that from the discussion that you want to reiterate, or that stands out, or that you want to draw attention to again?
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that a few folks have said now quite a number of times is, don't be afraid to keep your ears out. And when you're going through the world, that's one of the best ways that I find music as well. And it's also one of the most fun ways to kind of feel like you've got something, you've heard it, and it just kind of sticks with you. I think we all know that feeling. That's something that I really love, and being conscious when you listen through the world has really allowed me to find a number of things that I enjoy personally and professionally.
And to add to that is about the joy of discovery, whether you end up dancing to it or not. There's a whole world of really amazing music out there beyond the mainstream, and what a wonderful reason to go out on that adventure.
Wonderful. Any last words from you, Taja?
I'd echo what Philip and Nick said. Keeping our ears open is so important. Building relationships with music and dance is so important and really fun and exciting. There's more possibility for kind of shop talk, which is my favorite thing to do. So I love being able to get in the studio with all kinds of artists and be processing together.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Amy, I'll turn it over to you to wrap up and tell us a little bit more about the resources that we will be posting.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary Ellen, and thank you to everyone who's participated today. I'm particularly excited to get the resource page up and live for all of you. I know that you saw a lot of links and screenshots in today's presentation, so all of that will be compiled and available on the Dance USA website in the coming days. So do stay tuned for that, as well as the recording of today's webinar. And we may also make the PowerPoint available just separately, so for easy clicking through. I also want to highlight that you can go to the Dance USA website to find out about our next webinar, which is going to be in a couple of weeks, not too far away at all, on Wednesday, September 26th. At 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, and we will be hearing from entertainment lawyer Corey Fields to unpack getting music rights 101. So we know that is always a huge issue for dance artists, and hopefully that step-by-step webinar will be very helpful to those of you that need it. And then finally, the date is still to be set, but we will be hearing from a panel of choreographers to dive deeper in their own voices about how they work with music. And one of the fun takeaways that I've had from today is thinking about how American Composers Forum and Dance USA can help get some composer choreographer meetups happening in different regions of the country. So if this is something that is of interest to you, please do contact either Dance USA or American Composers Forum. We would love to help get you some names of composers or fellow dance artists in your region so you all could get together. And with that, please send us your resources of how you find music. You can email communications@danceusa. We know that how you find music is endless, and we'd love to continue to add to our resource list. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and be well.